Welcome back, or welcome to the Inner Fire Endurance Sports Podcast. I am your host, Coach Brad, or Brad Minus, where I bring you one of three things every single Wednesday. I'll either bring you information on training tips for any of your endurance sports, or I will bring you an interview with an influencer, or a coach, or another age group athlete, or I will bring you a product review. But today is going to be more like number one. You know why? Because it's summer. Yes, everybody, if you haven't believed it yet, it's summer. I know that we've been seeing extreme heat all over the nation right now, and especially here in Tampa, Florida, where we're seeing early in the morning, like this morning at 5:30 a.m., when it breached above 85 degrees with a 85% humidity and a 92% dew point, actually a 92-degree dew point, and it was hot. So it makes you stress just a little bit more, right? Especially when you have to get out there and train. Even as a beginner, as you step out onto the road to do your very first run, or you're just starting to run, you're just trying to get a mile in, the heat can take its toll. When you're running at 50, 60, 65, 70 degrees with no humidity, it feels like a dream. It feels meditative. That's why I like to run. I like to run to get out there and just be in solace, just be meditative. But the heat kind of changes that for me. I've got to learn. I've got to actually bring back my pace, and it's hard, right? I mean, I've got goals just like all of you do, and most of my clients. And this time of year, the biggest complaint I get from my clients is, hey, I couldn't hit my metrics because of the heat. And you know what most of the time I tell them? Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're not going to hit your metrics because your metrics are based on ultimate conditions. And right now, we're not going to have that, at least not till the middle of September, if not till the beginning of October. And that's okay. That's why we do more of our workouts based on RPE, or rate of perceived exertion, or rate of perceived effort, rather than based on our goal time, our goal race pace. That's what I want to talk about today. I am going to give you the whys, physiological stats, and then I'll give you 5 ways to deal with the heat, okay? Things to help. You're never going to be able to absolutely perform at those ultimate levels in this heat, but I can help you make it just a little bit more bearable. So let's just take a moment for our sponsors. This episode of the Inner Fire Endurance Sports Podcast is brought to you by my favorite bike shop, Outspoken Bicycles. Serving the community with the top cycling maintenance, fitting, and customer service professionals, Outspoken is the bike shop for anyone from the occasional rider to the elite mountain, road, or triathlon athlete. Providing bikes and accessories from the top manufacturers like Giant, Felt, and Specialized, Outspoken Bicycles can fulfill all of your cycling needs. Outspoken Bicycles, here in South Tampa, Clearwater, Florida, or at www.outspoken.net. Again, that's www.outspoken.net. And we're back. So we were talking about the heat, right? And it's summer. Let me paint a picture. So you're out there and you're running, right? And maybe the first mile ain't so bad. And the second mile is not so bad. But all of a sudden, that third mile, it just gets harder. The legs feel a little bit heavier. The mouth is a little bit drier. Just the paces aren't what you expect them to be. But then you look at your temperature. Maybe it's on your watch. Maybe it's on your bike. Maybe it's on the wall of the pool. And you see that it's 95 degrees outside. Well, why can't you hit your metrics when it's that high? Or why can't you sustain your metrics when the heat is that high? Well, let me tell you, it's energy. It's blood distribution. Why does it take so much energy? Because our blood is being filtered to the surface of our skin in order to cool it. That's the biggest issue. We have a certain amount of blood, and it's got to be distributed to whichever of our systems are taking most of the toll, right? When we're running, our legs, our core, our heart, our cardiovascular system. When we're biking, our cardiovascular system, our legs, our core, our back. When we're swimming, pretty much the whole thing, arms, legs, core, it's all being needed. But if I've now got to move that distribution to the surface of the skin, well, there's got to be a balance, right? So something's got to give. So in order for us to cool ourselves, for the body to go into that survival mode and cool itself, we've got to move some of that blood, and it's going to automatically do it. There's nothing that we can do about it. There's things to make it more bearable. There's things to help that blood distribution return back to the extremities. But when it's that hot, that's what's going to happen. There's only a couple of things that we can possibly do. Basically, what's going on is this. The blood is being filtered away from the muscles. It's being filtered away from the digestive system. And it's also being filtered away from the brain. The energy in this case, like I said, is the blood distribution. The blood will go to the first surface of the skin rather than the muscles. Our muscles tend to feel tighter. They tend to slow down a bit. They don't twitch as fast. Suddenly decide you're not hungry, so you don't take in calories, which are energy, which does help you supply more blood, more nutrients to the blood, so it can work efficiently. But you're not hungry because it's hot, right? And sometimes we're not even drinking, which was what we should be doing. But worst case is the brain. For all of you experienced athletes out there, have you ever looked back at a race that might have been a little hot and noticed that you made some poor decisions? Well, this is why. You're actually losing some of that blood distribution from the brain. Sometimes it feels hazy, and you'll make decisions that you might not in better conditions. You know, you might have tried to overtake that person in front of you that was going much faster, or at least at a higher perceived effort than you should have been. You might have gone at a higher power when you probably should have pulled back on your power. You're making some of these decisions that you probably wouldn't have. And then you look back and go, God, I know better than that. Why would I do such a thing? Well, it's because the blood distribution of your body is actually, the blood is moving away from the brain, and you're not getting as much, which might cause some of those possible things to happen. So that would leave me to one of my clients, their next question. Well, then maybe I should just keep training in the heat. Maybe I should train in the heat more. And then, you always say that the greatest thing about the human body is that it adapts. Well, yes. And that could happen, and it will. The thing is that training in the heat is one thing, but in order for our bodies to actually adapt to that heat, you'd have to stay in the heat. So that means not only training in the heat, but that means living out there, spending most of the day with the windows open, sleeping with the windows open. That's why the Kenyans can do what they do. They don't have a lot of air conditioning out there. So yeah, you can probably go ahead and adapt, but you're going to need to turn off your air conditioner. I don't think anybody's going to be doing that, right? But however, the more you train in the heat, the more you learn to suffer better. You're not adapting, but you might learn something by training a little bit more in the heat, trying different things in the heat that are other mental exercises to get you to make better decisions while you're out on the race course. You'll learn what you need to do to get through it, but it will not likely make you any faster. But like I said, you will learn to suffer better, okay? Let me tell you about ways that you can help yourself going through the heat. All right, so you always heard hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. I'm going to tell you that again. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. But the thing is, you want to make sure that you're completely hydrated before you start training. So that's number one. Number one is hydrate continually. Not just with water. While you're out training, it almost does nothing for you. You really do need a sports drink with electrolytes. Water, not only it will hydrate you, but it also filters out the sodium, which we need to keep in balance. You realize that even taking in the normal amount of water after you've been sweating could actually cause hyponatremia, which is like the opposite of dehydration, but it's not. Hyponatremia is when we're basically drowning our cells, where our cells have so much water in them that the oxygen can't get through. And we know through normal glycolysis is what helps us and what makes our muscles move. Oxygen, glucose, goes through the Krebs cycle inside the cells, makes ADP, and that's the energy that makes our muscles move. Well, if you have too much water in there, the oxygen has no way for it to filter through, which will then mix with the glucose, which then helps glycolysis, which then helps you make ATP. If you have too much water and not enough sodium, which is we need to keep in balance, then you could actually end up with hyponatremia by drinking up too much water. So while you're training, it is much better for you to have an electrolyte sports drink than straight water. Not that you can't do a little bit of both, but it needs to mostly be in some sort of electrolyte drink mix. And there's other things that have electrolytes in it besides sports drink, but sports drink are the most readily available. Again, what I wanted to say was to make sure that you're hydrated prior. We also want to know, how much are you going to need? How much water? How much liquid? How much of that do you need? Well, the only way for us to find that is to do a sweat test. Experts say that you should not lose more than 2% of your body weight during exercise, right? Personally, I found that the body can function on 80% of what it loses. So I've always steered my clients to, all right, you want to look at 80% of what your body loses. And the best way to find that out is a sweat test. Easily done, right? Weigh yourself nude before your exercise, and then weigh yourself after. But also account for what you took in and for maybe what you let go, right? Let's say that you get back from a run, you went out for a run for 1 hour, you didn't take anything in, you didn't take anything out, and you lost 1 pound. Well, that's 16 ounces. So then I would say is, if you look at your temperature of the time that you ran and the humidity and the dew point, and you want to put that down, and if you come close to those numbers when you are training the next time, then you want to take in somewhere around 13 ounces. It's actually 12.8, but let's be real. You can go with 13 ounces. So you would know that your body needs 13 ounces of fluid while you're training. Now, you don't want to take all that in at one time, obviously. So you're talking about 13 ounces. Maybe you want to divide that by 4, which is 3 to 4 ounces every 15 to 20 minutes, right? And that'll help. Or you can, take in 6 ounces every 25 minutes, 6.5 ounces. And that's how you find out your sweat test. So if you go out for 2 hours, find out how much you lost, how much you take in, then you subtract how much you take in, you add back in how much you took out, and then you'll come up with how much you're losing, and then divide that by 2, and then you'll get how many you did for your, for the 2 hour run. But I would be very specific and start journaling about what the temperature, the dew point, and the humidity was, so that when you race, you can look at those numbers and go, okay, I'm going to need to do this. I'm going to have to come closer to this rate versus another rate. Just recently, I was talking to one of my ex-clients who had just got done doing Mont Tremblant. IM 70.3, did pretty well. And he was asking me, he was like, you know what, I don't understand it, but this is the first time that I actually felt some GI issues during the run. I never feel that way. And it actually started as soon as I finished the bike. And I said to him, well, what were you doing? I said, did you change anything? And I said, no. And he said, and I says, well, why not? I says, wasn't the temperature different way up north than it is way down here by the equator? He goes, well, yeah. And I says, well, that's your problem. I says, you're not going to sweat at the same rate in those cooler temperatures than you are down here. So, of course, you're not going to need as much fluid. And he's like, aha. So we kind of figured that out for him. And hopefully the next time he will take that into account. So hopefully you can take that as a learning experience. So that's number one. Number one, hydrate continuously. Make sure that you hydrate beforehand, and make sure that you've done a sweat test so you know what to do while you're training and how much to take in. All right, an interesting study for number 2. So number 2 is Slurpee Pryor. Huh? What that? Is that a new comedian? Slurpee Pryor? He might be funny.